All right. So this is going to be a cool talk because I did some research and I spent some considerable time yesterday diving into what it takes to become an elite WordPress developer in terms of the rates you earn, the jobs you take, the clients you find, and so I wanted to see, well, what's the average hourly rate for a WordPress developer? Like, what does it cost to build a WordPress site? What are most people charging for that? And then compare that to this elite group of WordPress developers who really seem to absolutely be crushing it. And how can you get from, if you already are, if you're in one of these low paying groups where you're really struggling, what does it take to get into the higher group? Like, what do you have to do to go into, to raise your rates? Because one of the big challenges is if you raise your rates, especially like if you're like on job boards like Upwork or something like that, and you raise your rates, oftentimes at least I'll say this, at least the concern is that if you raise your rates, you're going to price yourself out of the market, and the clients are just going to go with people who are charging less. So what does it take to not have that be the problem? And so we're going to dig into that today. So if you're here, go ahead and put your name in the comments so I can tell that you're here. So having said that, so I dug into some research pretty much yesterday. So I went to like WP Engine had a report out, looked at some stats on Upwork. I don't know, 3 or 4 other places that I tried to gather as much data as I could to figure out what people are charging for their WordPress development work. And I tried to scope it down to WordPress freelancers. And what I mean by that is people that are basically self-employed and work with WordPress. So like if you're in a large agency, or if you do WordPress for like a big business, like I know I've got some colleagues that work at the government and manage WordPress sites there and so forth. I tried to exclude those kinds of people and just focus on the kinds of people who are like WordPress freelancers and either self-employed or just working with just a very small number of people in their organization. So having said that, I found out that the average hourly rate was just about somewhere between $10 and $29 per hour is what WordPress freelancers tend to make. And of course, that's not a very high rate, considering the fact that if you're a freelancer, then you have added taxes, you have to buy your own stuff, buy your own equipment. You can't, and then the big one is you can't usually bill out 40 hours a week of your time. And instead, you have to, cram as much value into the hours that you bill out as possible. So for example, if you see somebody who says they charge something like $85 an hour, and they must be rich now. Well, the issue is, and anybody who's ever done WordPress freelancing for a while knows this, that you're not charging $85 an hour, 40 hours a week, every week of the year. And so you have this situation where sometimes you don't have any clients and you're not charging out your rate at that point. And even if you cram pack your schedule, there's still other stuff you have to do, like accounting stuff and taxes stuff and just maintaining your stuff, your own education. There's other things that go into your day other than just crushing out sites at your hourly rate. So having said that, when I noticed that the hourly rate, the average hourly rate was somewhere between $10 and $29 an hour, I'm thinking, I'm trying to extrapolate that across the year, knowing what I just said about how you can't charge all 40 hours of your week and you have higher taxes, higher equipment costs, other things like that. What does it actually take to, how much are you going to make at that rate? And it's like, maybe $35,000 a year, maybe at that rate. And of course, if you're trying to provide for yourself, provide for your family, keep things going, if that's the job that you're relying on, that's not very much. And so what can you do if you want to make more than that? Where can you find better clients? Where can you find higher paying clients? What's the deal, basically, right? And so the deal is that if you're over on, if you're shopping around or trying to find jobs on somewhere like Upwork, which is like a job board, or you're taking on these really low paying projects, maybe you're taking on a project just to build your portfolio or something. Well, the problem is, and here's this is what I really think is the fundamental issue. And the issue is who is in the driver's seat. That's who is leading the project, and what role in the project are you playing? That's really the fundamental issue here. And it doesn't really have so much to do with like your actual hardcore technical skills as much as it does with the concept of who is leading the project, who's bringing the ideas to the table. So for example, why is it that Upwork is kind of a bad place for WordPress developers, generally speaking, to find projects? And here's the reason. Because when somebody posts a job on Upwork, they, at least in their minds at the time, they think as the client that's going to hire you. So they think that they know what they want. So they've put together the blueprint of what they want their website to do, or what update they need, or what feature they want added, or what plugin they want built, whatever it is. They've put together, okay, here's all the stuff, and they just need the labor to do it. They just need somebody to actually type the letters, to write the code. And the problem is, if all you do is come to the table with the ability to say yes when somebody asks you to write code to do a particular thing, in the world of WordPress freelancing, that's not going to be a valuable thing. And the reason why is because WordPress keeps getting better, and it's easier for people to do it on their own. And even apart from WordPress, even if you weren't going to use WordPress, there's other ways to get the end goal. There's other ways to put your web pages on the internet. There's just so many other ways to go about this stuff. So the problems with the job board community, or the job board economy, it doesn't, I'm not just banging on Upwork. It's like whatever the job board is, the issue is there are so many people there. It's people overseas, people that are just willing to charge less, people that don't have a lot of responsibilities, students, whatever, that just want to make a little extra money. They're hanging out on these job boards, and they're willing and able to work for so much less than people who are trying to run a serious business that's like their full-time job. And so what happens is you get into this price race to the bottom, and like someone says, okay, well, I can do that. I can, install, that plugin, or put some Gravity forms on somebody's website, or do whatever. And, it won't be that long. And you just, price out this project and do the work. And that's that. And so the issue is that that's just not a very valuable thing to offer someone, for a couple of reasons. Reason number one, there's so many more people in the WordPress economy right now that are willing to do that stuff. Like we just talked about, students and people overseas, and people that don't have a lot of family responsibilities, whatever. People just kind of dabbling in the WordPress market. They're willing to do stuff for cheap. And so that makes it really hard to do the same stuff for a higher price, because people will just go with the cheaper option. And so there's so many more people willing to do stuff for really low prices. That's problem number one. Problem number two, there's so many other ways now to actually accomplish the goal of getting your website online. So it doesn't really matter what kind of website people want. It's like, is it a Wix site? Is it a Squarespace site? Is it a Shopify site? Is it a WordPress site? A lot of times the end client doesn't really care that much about that. And so if you're just doing the labor of building a site, then you're competing against really low cost options of either cheaper developers doing it, or people just doing it for free on their own through Wix or Squarespace or something like that, for really low cost alternatives. And so the issue is like, how do you break out of that? How do you position yourself in a place where you're not competing against free? Right? So competing against free is a very difficult thing to do, because in a best case scenario, all you're doing is you're offering your client an option so they don't have to do the work, or they don't have to spend the time doing the stuff on a free do-it-yourself website builder. And so the better value, the thing that's more valuable than that is coming to the table with actual ideas and options that generate the outcome that your client wants from the website, as opposed to generating the website itself. And the big idea here is, why would a person assume that when a client calls them on the phone, like say you're working with a physician or a doctor or a psychologist or an author or a writer or somebody who has a local business, all of those people, they do the other things. They do those things. They don't build websites for a living. And consequently, they don't know all the stuff that a talented WordPress developer would know. So for example, when somebody comes to the table and they say, hey, I want you to build a 4-page website that puts my, these Word documents on the internet. I mean, people can do that on their own. Anyone can do that for cheap. And if you're just trying to take on projects to do that sort of a thing, that's going to be a really low cost thing. And on top of that, there's no recurring revenue built into any of those concepts. So for example, after you build the website and you've built a 4-page site or a 6-page site or whatever, and you launch the site, then that's it. You let the client go. And at that point, you have to go and get another client. And in between those two times, there's nothing. There's no work, there's no revenue, no income, and you're not scaling the business. So what I mean when I say scaling the business is not just staying in business for a long period of time. That's just staying in business. Scaling the business means growing the business, like making more money next month than you made this month, and then having it grow incrementally over time. And of course, if you want to scale your business, the key to that is being able to generate recurring revenue in some way. And the reason why is because when you generate recurring revenue, when you set up systems that enable you to continue working with your clients on an ongoing basis, then as you add more clients, you also add more revenue. Whereas if you're just building websites for people or just doing individual freelance projects, when the project ends, the client ends. The client relationship generally ends at that point as well. I mean, that you might get repeat work later on down the road, but the point that I'm making is it's not this ongoing thing. It's like when the project stops, the income stops, and then you have to go find another project after that. And so you end up building this very linear thing where you're like, you just, every time you get a new client, you're just staying right where you were before. As opposed to with recurring revenue, you get a client and you begin to like layer things on. You get the revenue from client 1, and then on top of that, you put the revenue from client 2, and on top of that, client 3. And so you have this business that now scales. Now, I know that a lot of WordPress developers and freelancers especially, they oftentimes think they don't have what it takes to put recurring revenue in place. They don't know what to do. They don't have systems in place for that. And a lot of times they think that the reason is, well, I don't sell plugins, or I don't sell themes. Like I can't have people buy plugins and themes and subscribe to those sorts of things for like updates and support and whatever. And sometimes people will offer other packages like web hosting or WordPress maintenance packages or something like that will enable them to sort of keep the relationship going because now somebody's buying hosting. But on top of the hosting though, it's like you're not really doing anything with the hosting. Like it's great. I'm not saying don't sell hosting, but I'm saying there's so many more things you can do on top of the hosting that's better. Because like a couple of problems with hosting is that too is a fairly low value thing. It's like, how do you sell an expensive hosting package? It's like there's clients generally don't care about the details and features of their hosting packages. They just want the site to be up. And so you can get some recurring revenue, but what's it going to be, like $20, $50 a month, something like that at most. So it's difficult to make a lot of money with a recurring revenue system that only includes hosting and maintenance packages. And it's because it's not really adding value, and it's being seen as an expense, like it's a pure expense to your client. Like the more they have to pay for hosting, the worse they feel about it, because they pretty much think, well, as long as the site's up and doing its thing, why do I have to keep paying more for the hosting? And it's difficult to sell the concept of security and plugin updates and backups and malware, whatever it is that goes into the hosting package. It's difficult to get a lot of value out of that sort of a thing. And so a lot of WordPress developers think, well, I don't have plugins, I don't have themes, I don't run a software as a service kind of app. So what am I to do? What are you supposed to do to get recurring revenue into my business other than sell WordPress maintenance and hosting packages? So then, the next kind of step is, okay, well, maybe I could do something like SEO, like search engine optimization, or some sort of online digital marketing package. And that's not a bad idea either. And so you can do that. And so, for example, maybe you help a client run, Facebook ads or Google AdWords, or you help them with various forms of content marketing or something like that to drive more traffic into the website. And that's something that you're thinking, okay, well, this is a pretty cool idea because now, I'm helping them drive traffic to the site. So that's a good thing. But that's also a really difficult thing to sell initially, especially initially, because it's another thing that's seen as an expense. So for example, if you say to your client, okay, what if we run some Facebook ads to your website? Or what if we run some paid Twitter traffic? Or what if we buy some clicks on Google, then that's the kind of thing that could potentially run traffic to the site. And of course, on the surface, people are thinking, okay, that's a good idea. But what your client is going to be hearing is, okay, well, how much is that going to cost? And if it's, I'm running a couple of paid traffic campaigns right now. I'm spending like $150 a day. So, that adds up. That's several $1,000s over the, $3,000 or more dollars over the course of a month. And, that's an expensive, quote unquote, thing if all you're seeing is the expense. If you're not seeing the conversions, if you're not seeing any of the other stuff that's actually generating actual income, then nobody's going to sign up to that. I mean, 3,000, like say you're doing $100 a day on some sort of a paid campaign. Well, take that over 30 days. It's like $3,000 over the course of a month. That's oftentimes more than people are charging for the whole website. And so, the numbers just don't add up for your client at that point. And that makes it a difficult thing to sell because, it's an expense. Again, it's the concept of being seen as an expense. And the two problems with being seen as an expense are when someone sees you as an expense, they want to get the price down as low as possible. That's what you do with expenses, right? That's where all the price haggling comes in, is just trying to push the price down to get your expenses down so that, everything's more profitable. But investments are different sorts of things. So if somebody sees you as an investment, then the price haggling generally stops, and the shopping for lower prices and trying to find a lower alternative generally stops, because you're the one they want. You're the person they want, and all the other people that aren't doing the things that you're doing, then then now you're differentiated from that. You're set apart. You're set above all of those things because you're generating income. And so, so what we were talking about before, it's like, okay, so you don't have plugins, themes, or software as a service to sell. So you get into things like digital marketing of various sorts, whether it's paid AdWords, pay-per-click campaigns, whatever it might be. But all of those things are good things, but they're generally seen as an expense. And so the way to be seen as an investment is, what are you going to do with the traffic after it hits the website? And this is the part of the equation where everything generally just falls right off the cliff. And everyone's doing the same thing, which is a low value proposition. And that thing is, the strategy just falls off the table as soon as you launch the site, right? So like a lot of times people will get together, and like one of the really exciting parts of the client relationship is the strategizing behind, what are you going to do on the website to really, bring people in and do these awesome things. What's it going to look like? What pages do you have? How is all that going to work? And then you develop the strategy, and even sometimes it involves a social media strategy as well. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and then you launch the website, and then like right when you're expecting the strategy to come to life, then it all just deflates, because you leave the client, even though you've built this really nice website for them. You just, oftentimes the person who knows how to run the website leaves the project altogether to go find another client to go build another website, because the revenue stops. And you just, like, even if you wanted to, you can't just stay helping the client because you haven't set systems in place to generate the recurring revenue. And so what I'm suggesting is the way out of this low value, low income WordPress freelancing situation, and the way into this elite group that's scaling their business with recurring revenue, is to set up the systems for recurring revenue. So what that means is, if you're in the business of selling these digital marketing packages, keep doing that for sure, but also monitor the success of the conversions and do things to make the conversions even better. So, for example, if you need to optimize a landing page, if you need to change the copy that's written on the stuff that's driving the traffic, if you're doing like Twitter ads or Facebook ads or whatever, you can monitor the different images that you're using to drive the traffic there, because you can actually keep the content the same on a lot of these paid ads. If you change the image, it makes a huge difference. I mean, I've seen the difference between like a 0.5% conversion rate to like a 3% conversion rate just by changing the image that's associated with one of the ads. So, that's the kind of thing that you can monitor and look at on a recurring basis. So, I mean, I'm not talking about doing it all day long every single day for your client, but I'm talking about a couple hours per week. And then create a report that says, here's what's going on, here's your recommendations, here's what's working, here's what's not working as well, and then making some recommendations as to what to do about all of those things. And that's just one possible option with regard to like paid ads on Twitter or Facebook or whatever. But there's other things too, right? So there's like things you can do with email, things you can do with organic social media, things you can do with content marketing, podcasting, blogging. There's all these different kinds of things that can be done. And the overall point with the whole picture is, wouldn't like when you build a website for somebody, it's kind of like you're building this like awesome aircraft or whatever that's really just going to launch and take people where they want to go. And then of course, after you build the thing, you just plop it in their driveway and it just sits there and they don't know what to do with it. And so even though they could be using it to just fly across the world and do awesome things, it's just sitting there because the airplane didn't come with a pilot. And so wouldn't it be awesome if the airplane came with a pilot, so that now that you've built all this stuff, you can actually do something with it? And what I'm suggesting is the pilot is you. And so wouldn't it be great if the WordPress site, if all of the online stuff you put together came with someone who runs it, and not just with any old person, like your client, they might think they want to run it themselves, but the reason they can't is really, one of the biggest reasons they can't is they don't have the time. They're busy doing the other things in their business. They're doing the things to generate the outcomes for their business that they want the website to generate as well. So, for example, if they're an author or a writer, then they're doing this stuff to sell more books or to get people to show up at book signings, or if they're going to be given a talk somewhere. Like tons of times, these authors and life coaches and people like that, they go give talks and presentations at places, and they want people to show up. And so they're busy doing the things to get people to show up. And of course, the website and the online presence that they have is another tool to use to get people to show up. And if you could actually make a system that gets people to show up, that's awesome. And that's the goal. And or like if it's doctors, like we talk about all the time that I work with a lot of doctors, and like what they pretty much want is they want somebody to call them on the phone. They generally speaking don't sell a whole lot of products off their actual website, but the main conversion that they're after is phone calls from people so that they can come in and have an appointment, see the doctor. And so that's what they're doing. So the reason that doctors don't blog is because they're either busy seeing patients or they're busy trying to get more people to call them on the phone in other ways, right? They're doing a lot of I work with functional medicine doctors, and they give presentations and talks and things like that too about how what they do is different from the general primary care and so forth that people receive. And so they don't have the time to do the blogging. I mean, that's like the last thing on their mind, or whatever it is that you need to do to run the website. They don't have the time to do those sorts of things. And so, or even a local business that sells like furniture or whatever, like they're doing things to like make sure that the furniture gets shipped and that it comes in, and all the things that are happening, and they don't have a lot of time to go analyze their paid traffic campaigns and see how it's going and whatever. And even if they did, they would get into all of these numbers and spreadsheets and charts and graphs. They don't know anything about that. I mean, it's kind of hard. I mean, it's hard work to learn how to optimize that stuff properly. But it's also valuable stuff. That's what the value of the people that are just doing these little jobs and getting paid nothing for it. They're not doing any of the things that I'm talking about right now. They're literally just putting Band-Aids in place. Like somebody says, oh, I need a plugin that does XYZ, and they do the thing. But like, so what? So what if you did that? You can build the best plugin there ever was, but if it doesn't actually generate an outcome for your client to grow their business in some way, it isn't going to be a valuable thing. So let me just say one last thing about value. And the reason that I want to bring this out is because there's so many people that go around saying you have to add value to your client's website. You have to value this, and you have to put value here. And the word value has been used in so many different ways and so many times that it's sort of like bland. It just doesn't mean anything. And so I want to dig a little bit deeper into this concept. There's two things that really generate value, right? So there's two different kinds of value. One is something that like gives you a benefit, and it's like something that actually earns money for you. or makes your life better in some way. That brings value. And the other thing is something that something that you just want that doesn't necessarily have value. That's another thing. So something that you just want, like for example, you want to eat a cookie. And so, if somebody were to give you a cookie, you just want it. It's not going to make you healthier. It's not going to grow your business. You just want to have something like that. But there's value there. But there's less value with that sort of a thing than the kind of thing that actually makes an actual difference. So, like showing you how to do an exercise routine so that you actually lose weight, that is actually going to make your life better. And that's there's value in something like that. It's a tangible outcome. And that's what you should be focusing on. Those kinds of tangible outcomes are much better. So like when somebody shows up at Upwork, they're thinking, okay, I'm going to put together a little proposal to, try to get a website because I want a website. And that's kind of like the cookie idea. It's like somebody wants a website just because they want the website. Haven't thought through what it's going to do or how it's going to work or why it's going to be better than not having a website. I mean, maybe they just want a link for their business card, or maybe they've just started their business and everybody says, well, if you start a business, you have to have a website. So go and get a website. You can get one for cheap on one of these job boards or whatever. And so if somebody's satisfying that particular kind of a need, it's an inexpensive kind of thing because there's no real benefit really. It's just like, okay, it's like, I want it. And that's the end of the game right there. But if you actually have a situation where you're building a website that generates the outcomes, like we were just talking about, that gets more people to book signings, or if you're working with a band, I'm working with a guy that does concert piano music and stuff, and like he wants people to show up at the concerts. And so if you're generating a website that does that for him, that enables him to actually, broadcast out to people when he's going to be somewhere, where he's going to be, what he's going to be doing, whatever, if he records a new album, get people to be able to see that, that's the kind of stuff that really matters. It goes beyond just wanting a website and extends into why do I want the website? Like, what is the outcome I want to achieve because I have the website? Now, the last thing to say about all of this is if you're building a website, you have to generate more income for your client because they have the website than the cost of the site. And so one of the things and I'm going to dig into this probably again next week, because this is a really critical thing, but I want to, kind of pop out the idea real quick so you guys can be thinking about it. And then when we touch on it again, we'll dive deeper. But the gist of it is, if you're building a website that doesn't generate any income, then the value of the website is very, very low. It's again on that like I just want it side, and so it's not something that people are willing to really invest deeply in. And so, if you're putting together a proposal for a website, and in your mind, kind of in the back of your mind, you're just kind of sitting on this concept, just sort of secretly, that you're going to build the site. It's going to be pretty and look nice and work great on mobile devices and all that stuff. And it's going to go out on the internet, but then no one's going to go there. No one's going to do anything with it. It's just going to sit there. And it's very unlikely that it's going to generate new customers or new clients or new leads or anything like that. Then, how much can you charge for something like that? Right? It's like, what is that? And like, even if put yourself in the shoes of your client, how much would you pay just to have a nice looking website, even though it's not doing anything? And so the answer is not much. And it's going to be seen as a big expense without much return on that investment. And so to shift out of that, the gist of it is, how do you put together a system that's actually going to help the client? That's really the big deal. And that's really the essence of it. It's like, what can you do to make sure that because there is a website, it's actually helping the client? And if that's the kind of thing that you want to talk more about, a lot of that really depends on who the client is, what their outcomes are. And there's so many different things that can be done so that everybody wins, so that it benefits you, it benefits the client, it benefits your client's customers. Everybody is benefited if you put the thought in ahead of time as to what these things are that you can do. So There you have it. So that's the gist of it. That's how you shift out of the masses of people, the frenzied, oversaturated WordPress marketplace, and into actually delivering websites that are valuable to your client and valuable to you, and build a strong business for yourself. So that's it, guys. So if you want to talk more about this, and like to kind of see what these sorts of things are for you, see what kinds of systems and processes you could put in place for the types of clients you generally work with, and you want to see like who, or maybe you don't know who that even is yet. Maybe you want to really figure out like who is my target audience, like who's my ideal audience, and then once you figure that out, like what rates can you be charging for this sort of a stuff, and like how can you set up systems that generate recurring revenue for that particular audience, and that's the kind of stuff that we can talk about. We can even talk about one-on-one. So I've set my schedule up on at doublestack.net/call. So if you go to doublestack.net/call, you'll see my personal schedule. You can pick a time that works for you, and we can have a one-on-one conversation to really dive into this concept specifically for how you're doing your business, like the kinds of stuff that you work on, the clients you work on, the stuff you find the most interesting. How can you put together a system that really is tailored to the people that you want to be working with? So we can talk about that. It'll be about a 45-minute call, and we'll dive into those types of things, and it's totally free. So if you want to talk about this stuff, head over there. I've got a couple of spaces available right now, and again, this is like my personal schedule. It's so the spaces are kind of limited, but if you head over there, you'll see some spots available, and you can pick one that works for you, and then we'll talk about that stuff so that you can move yourself out of this low-paying, stressful, working crazy hours kind of situation, and into a situation where you're actually less stressed. You have more reliable income. You've got stable, recurring revenue coming in, and best of all, you're like genuinely helping the clients that you work with. So if that sounds good to you, head over to doublestack.net/call. Pick a time that works for you. Right after that, you'll see a little form with a couple of questions about just about you, about like who you are, who you work with, things like that, so that I can prepare ahead of time for the call to make sure that it's crammed with as much value for you as I can. So if that sounds good, head over to doublestack.net/call. Check that out. And in between now and then, I'll be seeing you on, let's see, so today's, I got a lot going on. So today's Thursday. I'll see you again on Tuesday at 2:00 for another one of these Facebook Lives. So awesome, guys. Take care, and have an awesome weekend. See you soon.